Hello, good morning, and welcome to Daybreak on Trust TV. It's a beautiful Thursday morning out here. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
Indeed, a beautiful Thursday morning it is. I am Sunday Michael Ogo. Thanks for joining us this morning.
All right, well, you're welcome to the show. It is a beautiful day right here in the nation's capital, and let's go straight to the headlines this morning. Southeast kicks as PDP National Working Committee approves Wike as Atiku running mate.
Interesting. FG also strike more complex than Nigerian thinks. FG.
Nigeria's foreign reserves dip by $2.9 billion in 8 months, says the IMF.
And now the story in details. Following the recommendations of the National Advisory Committee, the National Working Committee of the People's Democratic Party has approved the nomination of Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike as the vice presidential candidate of the party for the 2023 general elections. Daily Trust reliably gathered from various sources that the NWC members, after studying the report of the committee, unanimously endorsed Wike. The committee, said to have been put together by the presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar, had earlier recommended Wike for the VP ticket. The three governors initially recommended by the National Advisory Committee were Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike, Delta State Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, and Emmanuel Odom of Akwa Ibom State.
Now, the federal government has said issues around the ongoing industrial action embarked upon by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, and other 3 university-based unions are not as simple as Nigerians think. The Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, said this Wednesday when briefing State House reporters on the outcome of the virtual Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari at the Presidential Villa, Abuja. He also announced that the Council approved the establishment of e-learning centers for primary schools across the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. The ASU had started strike on February 14, 2022, over unresolved issues with the federal government.
And moving on, the Nigerian Foreign Exchange Reserve has dropped by $2.9 billion within 8 months, according to the International Monetary Fund. IMF also said the current account deficit narrowed significantly in 2021, helped by import compression and higher net oil balance. On the real gross domestic product, GDP, IMF stated that the growth in broadening to all sectors except oil, but inflation remains high. The global lender added that economic recovery continues to gain strength on the back of services and agriculture, with GDP growth reaching 3.6% in Q1 2022. An International Monetary Fund team led by Jasmine Rahman held meetings with the Nigerian authorities from June 6 to 10th to discuss recent economic and financial developments and the economic outlook for the country.
Well, that wraps it up on the headlines. We'll now take some reports. The federal government says its initial submission that the Owo attack had the imprint of ISWAP was based on intelligence reports. It is, however, refusing to get into the debate on the correctness of that piece of information. Information Minister Lai Mohammed made the federal government side clear on Wednesday while briefing newsmen at State House Abuja after a meeting of the Federal Executive Council. Kende Amodu reports.
Ever since the information minister's projection that the Owo Catholic Church attack was probably carried out by the Islamic State West Africa province ISWAP, the stand has come under criticism. The governor of Ondo State, Rotimi Akeredolu, described the conclusion as being too hasty. And when asked his opinion on Wednesday, the information minister refused to get involved in a debate.
And whether it's not, I don't think that is the issue really. The issue is that it ought not to have happened, and the security is doing its best to ensure there will be no repeat of it. The federal government has access to a lot of information and intelligence reports. And I want to say that saying it was ISWAP must have been based on their intelligence reports.
The information minister was also not forthcoming when asked about the federal government losing its $1.7 billion claim against JP Morgan Chase Bank over the transfer of proceeds from the sale of OPL 245 in the controversial Malibu oil deal. Judge.
Strangely enough, the judge said we were not able to establish that we lost $1.7 billion. But also read further that the lawyers said they have studied the judgment and they would take the appropriate step, whether to appeal or not.
And speaking on another projection he made on education, the information minister acknowledged that the underlying issues in the ongoing strike by the Academic Staff Union of Universities were complicated.
I wish that the ASU issue is as simple as many of us think it is. I don't think it's that simple, but I want to assure you that a lot is going on behind the scenes, and I think probably the Minister of Education will be in a better position to give you the details.
The Federal Executive Council, however, went ahead in its usual tradition on Wednesday to approve contracts in the Ministries of Works and Housing and Aviation. From State House, Abuja, Kehinde Amudu, Trust TV News.
And now moving on to politics, the members of the House of Representatives have called for a veto to overrule President Muhammadu Buhari on Section 84, subsection 8, which he has refused to assent to by invoking Section 58. The federal lawmakers made the call at plenary on Wednesday after many lawmakers lost their seats due to the president's not assenting to the electoral amendment by both chambers of the National Assembly. The report.
Colleagues, something is wrong in an environment, in an institution, where the two leaders of the Senate would have to cross to other parties because of an inherent inclement condition. Anything that occasions it, anything that warrants it, if it is our electoral act, if it is our politics, if it is the environment where we operate, we need to retool. And like you said, we've got to do a better work and we have to fight on. For me, it is just a battle that is lost. The war is on, and that we should go ahead to make sure that that law is retooled, made clear, and if it demands it requires this parliament to take action to override what has not been signed, we should be willing to do so.
We cannot continue to act as if we are under the executive arm of government. This constitution gave us the powers, just like it gave to them. We must wake up as a parliament where we pass our laws and we are sure that we have done the right thing. We should start overriding Mr. President, because this is just the beginning. Today, NDDC Act is in force because the parliament, which we are part of, did it. Why are we afraid? Mr. President has not committed any offense. What he has done is the rule of law and the constitution. And I believe by the time we do our own, by overriding his veto, we will not have committed any offense. We will be working according to the constitution and the rule of law.
But for us to override, I believe we require 2/3 majority. And it cannot be by voice vote, neither can it be by way of signatures, unless, of course, you have enough 2/3 by signature. So what I would suggest is that you bring the application, a formal motion or notice, so perhaps tomorrow or whenever you are able to do that. And then we'll determine whether or not this House is ready to override or not. I think that's the way to go. That's the proper procedure. And I appreciate your comments. And I believe you're talking about the provision on statutory delegates, which Honorable Toby alluded to earlier. I believe that's the provision you're talking about. So we'll go ahead. You can file your motion, and hopefully we'll be able to list it tomorrow or whenever the calendar permits.
Now, moving away from politics, young boys and girls in camps made for displaced families fleeing war are in danger of being exposed to drugs at a very young age. Dozens of families who are trapped in Kuchingoro camp for 7 to 9 years with no home to return to and no money to afford houses in decent locations within Abuja are currently in desperate situations. Nana Muhammad was there and now reports.
Kuchigoro camp in the city of Abuja has become a place thousands of internally displaced families have found as home to raise their children. For 9 years, Aisha Bakura from Goza local government area of Borno State has lived with her husband and 4 children in a makeshift room. Aisha is concerned with the growing use of drugs among young people and other vices within the camp.
Whenever I step out, I always think of what is happening to the children. I live in fear of the unknown because of lack of trust and fear of what the children may do. I used to lock them up whenever it's time for us to go to bed. I sleep with the keys. This is because I am afraid of letting them loose. Many of them do drugs, including young boys and girls. Availability of the drugs can make our children take up such bad habits.
Dr. Inya Ode is a humanitarian worker. She is worried that if nothing is done to save the children and families in displaced camps, both within and outside of Abuja, the future may not be pleasant.
People in those camps or settlements that have not been taken care of, that don't feel the sense of nationalism or the sense of patriotism to their country, because the country has not cared for them. And because of that pending disaster, we see all kinds of vices coming through. We had a commission to take care of IDPs, displaced persons and refugees and all of that. It was a commission. Now we have a full-fledged ministry to take care of displaced persons, the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. But then how far so far? What is the ministry doing?
Robinson Okeke, an Abuja-based mental health specialist, said, people who are forced to leave their homes live in constant trauma and depression if they are not cared for in terms of providing the basic human needs.
It goes to the primitive age, when humans had little to boast of. It was a very critical time in human developmental history. Okay, and so at that time you see rage, you see anger. That was at a time when Thomas Hobbes wrote his very popular saying that life was brutish, was harsh, and was short. Because it was a primitive, way of life. So when people run away from their homes, they leave their lives behind.
Nigeria has the 3rd highest number of internally displaced persons in Africa, spread in camps across the country. This statistic, experts believe, portends danger to the nation if necessary action is not taken. Nana Muhammad, Trust TV News, Abuja.
A very pathetic human living conditions there at the IDP, not just in Abuja, but I'm sure in several other parts of the country. Yearning for some form of intervention and inclusion. You just imagine what becomes the fate of those little ones, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, who probably have not been captured in the National Immunization Program, who are exposed to all kinds of diseases on account of living under a condition that is subhuman. We hope that with that report, the authorities would swing into actions and try to make life a lot more easier. We would now take a short break, and when we return, we will bring you the newspaper review and analysis, as our guest analyst is already in the studio. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that a look like the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
necessarily tribal or regional.
Because I have said that.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television. It's that section again where we bring you all the headlines from leading newspapers in the country. And I have the honor and privilege at this point to welcome in the studio a regular guest and a friend of the show, the general editor of the Daily Trust title. And I'm talking about no other than Malam Hamza Idris. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning. It always fascinates me how you wake up very strong, knowing fully well how late you go to bed at night. I hope that we continue to, God continue to strengthen you to be able to do this for the benefit of Nigeria. We'll bring you straight our first paper for this morning, and it will be the Daily Trust as usual, brimming with several interesting headlines across the breadth of the front page. And the leading headline this morning, of course, still dwelling politics as we draw closer to the deadline for presenting a runmate. And the headline here with the Daily Trust newspaper reads, running mates as kicker. I believe in politics of inclusion, and this is coming from the governor of Plateau State, Lalong. You would recall that there have been several projections, that seem to be suggesting that if we would have to break the Muslim ticket, then Lalong supposedly have a chance at it, especially given that the governors were able to strike a deal that the vice president should come from one of them. And we have some riders there. Asiwaju can't win without a Muslim running mate, and this is coming from Kalu, the ex-governor of Abia State. All eyes on Buhari, Tinubu, PDP screen contenders today. Well, 1 minute it is Wike, the next minute the race is back on. But I'm sure whatever happens today, there is only 24 hours. We would know before the day runs out, because they have practically less than 48 hours to that ultimate deadline by INEC. And you would do well not to eke the Electoral Commission. If not, your chances could be dealt a serious blow. You'll find the details of this story on page 5 of the Daily Trust. And directly related to that story is this massive picture, the picture that speaks volume. One picture, that is a reflection of the conversation that has been ravaging across the country, which is the amount of interest that Nigerians seem to have been showing towards the 2023 election. It appears that we now have candidates that have sort of stirred the interest of a lot of people who prior to this time would rather stay docile. We are beginning to get some kind of reawakening. We hope indeed, because it's important to have an inclusive government where people can take ownership of the process. I mean, to think that the recent election, Ibrahim, in Anambra, was the governorship election was decided by just 105,000 people in a state with over 4 million population, with over 2 million registered voters. That's a nice sort. It's less than 10% of your population deciding for everybody who leads them. You want, that's why people don't take ownership of governance. It is important that we are getting this kind of people show interest. And I mean, the ages of the people we see on the cover are far more than 18. It does appear to you that they have not been interested for a long time. Whatever it is that is stirring this interest is good for this country, and long may it continue. This is from the Independent National Electoral Commission's FCT office for voters registration in Abuja yesterday. And then we have the story on the belt. Aftermath of primaries, National Assembly pushes for Electoral Act reamendment. We understand 70% of them are not coming back. We understand where this whole clamor is coming, but basically, it appears Nigerian political laws are just meant to serve the political elite. They will do everything to perpetuate themselves in office. And the belt, the editors speak here. We have IPOP kills one, Paste sits at home on corpse in Anambra. You find that story on page 6. How pathetic. 4 men gang rape 13-year-old girl in Borno. Well, page 17 has the details of that story. Kano Assembly approves 10 billion naira loan for CCTV and others. You find that story on page 4. And then right below the nameplate, you have the 2 other big stories for the day. How gas, bread, and fuel prices raised inflation to 17.71% in May. The inflation number continued to go up, and we understand why. Each of these products As you recall, Ibrahim seemed to have jumped, has quadrupled in the last 3-4 months.
And it doesn't seem like slowing down.
No, it doesn't appear that there is any end in sight. And finally, on the Daily Trust title this morning, foreign reserve drops by $2.9 billion as bank tighten forest reserve. Yesterday, I got a call from some friends saying, is there anything you can do for us? We've been on the line to get forest. I told them, well, I traveled recently myself. I couldn't get one. If I can't save myself, I definitely cannot save you. These are the stories that the Daily Trust title is serving you for your reading delights this morning.
All right, the next newspaper we're going to be looking at this morning is the Leadership newspaper, and of course it doesn't deviate from the usual narrative right now. 24 hours to INEC deadline, Northeast, Northwest lobby Tinubu for running mate. PDP screens VP candidate today. That is a major headline on the front page of the Leadership newspaper, and it carries a rider. Senator Binta Garba makes case for female VP, and APC presidential candidate may unveil running mate today. Still on the front page of the Leadership newspaper, Nigeria's inflation soars to new heights of 17.71%. Strike, ASU issue more complicated than Nigerians think, says the federal government. Well, that's another new dimension to the ASU strike that we're currently facing. Unravel those behind our killings, Senate tells security agencies. Well, the federal government has made a declaration, and they seem to be backtracking a bit concerning the people they feel are responsible for that attack. Well, it remains to be seen whether any headway will be made in that regard. Bandits sack 8 Kebbi Niger villages, killed 33, abduct 30. That is another headline on the front page of the Leadership newspaper. Going back to politics, Yobe senatorial ticket, why I won't step down for Lawan. Machina. That is a developing story that came to the fore, I think, in the last couple of days, and is gaining some traction. Well, it remains to be seen how that unfolds. Well, these are the major headlines on the front page of the Leadership newspaper this morning.
And we will move to the national economy. Let's deviate a bit from the politics-serving platform this morning to discuss the economy. And the national economy this morning has quite a number of those stories that border on the well-being of our economy, starting with the major headline, 81 checkpoint, extortion, stifling trades on Seme, Idi-Roku border routes. This is according to importers. These are popular land border routes that account for most of the land trades in Nigeria. You have the Seme, Idi-Roku, and of course the Jibia in Katsina. We have a story above the nameplate. Active phone lines in Nigeria crossed 200 million mark. That's amazing. That would mean one phone line per person in Nigeria, with a population of slightly above 206 million by the last census update. You have the picture there of the Minister of Petroleum and the Executive Secretary of the Nigeria Content Board there on the front page at the Nigeria Women in Oil and Gas Conference, which had recently. And directly below that picture, we have crude oil. Nigeria, 6 others drop in production, according to OPEC reports. We are struggling to even do the quota that was allocated to us, not to talk of even take advantage of the current windfall occasioned by the Russian-Ukrainian crisis. And directly below that, we see Nigeria inflation hits new heights of 17.71%. And vocational skills in Nigeria power sectors to get $46 million, according to the EU and African Finance and Development Funding. These are the major stories on the front page of the national economy this morning.
Well, it seems now it's time for us to actually delve into the analysis of these headlines that we've actually just reeled out. And, there's nowhere to start. But the running mate issue. The deadline is fast approaching, and lots of permutations here and there. And we just saw the major headline on the front page of Daily Trust saying that Lalong believes in a politics of inclusion. How important is this running mate choice to what we do refer to as politics of inclusion?
You see, Nigerian democracy is evolving for good. I'm an optimist. Many people are looking at these permutations from the negative perspective, but it's positive for us. Why? Before, who has been talking about vice president or deputy governor? I just pick, because they describe them as spare tire or whatever. But they are no longer that. This is one. And then secondly, you've seen how tough it was to produce the two major presidential candidates who will also now battle to suppress emerging regional actors from upcoming political parties. This is a serious development. Thirdly, the issue of Muslim or Christian ticket is not even an issue when you check what the real actors are doing. They are just thinking about how the numbers will come. Proponents of Muslim ticket are mostly from the south now. If you go to Plateau State, those who are advocating for Lalong's candidate are not even Christians. They are Muslims. Go and check the figures. Go and check the analysis. Go and check the articles and all that, both on legacy and social media. So people up there, they are just talking about how to win election, irrespective of these sentiments, religion, tribe, and other persuasions. Sadly, our religious leaders are yet to key into some of these things, because assuming religious leaders also key into it, we will demystify that myth that sharply divide Nigerians. But can Jamaatul Nasrul Islam, Murik, what have you, and even some groups that we never heard about them, they are now hurling insults at each other. And the politicians, they don't bother. Lalong, of course, he is an interested party, but he says that he wants to be vice president not because of his faith, but because of his capacity. He said he was able to, work out a formula that changed the narrative in Jos.
The religious tolerance.
This issue of inclusion, because he said that most of the crisis being experienced in Plateau was because of exclusion. Certain people feel that, okay, it is ours, so no matter what, nobody should be there. But he was able to now change some of this. On the other side, Kalu, the Senate chief whip, very funny. He said already Tinubu has a deputy. Who is that deputy?
His wife.
He said his wife is a pastor of the Pentecostal church. So she has already solved that problem. And if Nigerians want APC to retain power, they should now look for a strong person from the north and a Muslim. Now this is his own understanding. And if, in political science, they say the end justifies the means. So for us, we're just looking at the permutation, but I want to advise that Nigerians who are really not aware of where these politicians are heading to, they should stop creating additional enemies for themselves. The politicians, they don't care. They just want to win election. I think this is my take on this.
Interesting. Yes. The question really would be, for me, would be, like you said, it's an interesting time in our political landscape. But what is this suggesting, especially because we are also beginning to see, as captured rightly on the front page of the Daily Trust, some massive surge in PVC registration. What in your estimation do you think is driving this renewed interest and vigor for young people, not exactly young in some cases, for people to begin to take active interest to participate in the forthcoming
they have seen what the delegates did. Very few people. because of the indiscretion of some people. Now, ordinarily, most likely, if not at the national level, maybe at the local level, at the subnational level, assuming there is the inclusion team, many of those who found their way because they have enormous resources at their disposal wouldn't have been there. So some people have commercialized the ticket to such an extent that even when you have a credible person who you feel will change your life when he gets to the parliament or when he wins the governorship, simply because resources are not there for him to mobilize delegates, now those people have been edged out. This is my thinking.
That's right.
And then there is also serious mobilization by leaders of some of the so-called banana political parties. They are no longer banana political parties now. We have serious contenders now in some political parties that were not heard of before. And they will spring surprises, especially at the subnational level. You will see some state legislators from unknown political parties because people are tired and people want to take, back their
country.
Yes, the power is vested in people.
That's right.
We are just not making use of the numbers in Nigeria.
True.
But my only fear is that is the snag on this, based on my analysis. Last night, even after closing, I kept reading, saying, okay, what is really happening? Because I was appalled when we saw this photo, is that gradually, which is also positive, government agencies and all that are now, attaching preference to identity. You will not get some privileges unless you have
your PVCs.
Some banks will not give you loans now until you present your PVC. You will not travel to some places unless you have
access a worship center, as we have seen.
Worship centers and all that. Even politicians now, some will say, don't even come to my house. Because you just come and share money and you don't have
PVC.
You only make noise.
Interesting. Before I take you out of this conversation, one story that we have not seen in most papers making to the paper is this Saturday's election in Ekiti.
Yes.
Discussing this whole politics, a lot of us think that the Ekiti election will be a litmus test for what to expect in 2023, whether in terms of voters' turnout or the deployment of the BOVAS devised by INEC, or how even non-state actors conduct themselves around this. We saw them sign the peace accord yesterday. What do you think of the Ekiti election in the light of the preparations towards 2023?
The first statement is a litmus test for politicians and for political parties. Check out the contenders. The governor of IME is rounding up. He has brought the person he wants to, take over from him. PDP, Lucas Shoguoni, the former governor, right? In another political party.
SDP.
Yes. Almost about 6 or thereabout political parties, they have strong contenders, and all of them are upbeat. And this ripple effect. Whichever political party wins, they will their hope of making a stronger statement at the national level, will become more visible. And that is why all the actors, state and non-state actors, are really heading to Ekiti. Look at the police, the DIG, about 3 deputy, Inspector Generals. Many of them, almost apart from the IG, any other category they are in Ekiti. The military, they are watching from the sidelines. Of course, they are not expected to be seen. The DSS, and then all the INEC, you know, they are not keeping their election material with the CBN. Can you see how
sensitive
things are now changing? Because ordinarily, why should you even take
sensitive materials to the central?
It's not what is sensitive there. You know, former INEC chairman, you know, he at one of the forums, he said he went on election observation in one of these African countries, and they went to a certain village. They only met one man in a primary school with a lantern, and all the election materials
are kept on there,
waiting for people to come and cast their vote. So there is no. Do you know that our voters, I mean the paper where is more expensive than
than the currency.
Yes, because of the, you know, we don't really trust ourselves. So we are gradually demystified, because by the time we succeed in getting it right in Ekiti, by deploying the beavers, by now entrusting the election material in the hands of some people, and then
transmitting electronically,
and then people respect themselves, and then they come
play
out.
by the rules.
It will be a very good signpost to what will happen in 2023. So it's a litmus test for politicians, and it's a litmus test for Nigeria. Because whatever happens, if we mess up, even the international community will say, okay, the 2023 maybe will be the final throw that
nail in the coffin.
Break the camel's back.
Exactly.
Well, that's something that we need to keep our eye on. We'll definitely do that. Well, still talking about, you alluded to something earlier that actually caught my interest. You talked about very few people making decisions for the majority when you were talking about the delegates. So another category of people that actually fall into this into this particular sphere are the legislators. They are a small group of people, and they make laws that actually affect the many. And right now we've heard them beating the drums of war after the primary elections. After the primary elections, there's lots of rancor being created about section this, section that, we will veto this, we will veto that. Where's all this coming from, and why now?
Again, positive development there. Honestly, I'm so happy today that positive things are happening. But only curious observer will know that all these things are positive. During the last election season, we didn't hear this ranting and then tantrum from the legislators, because that time they were able to, you know, I don't want to use the word manipulation, but they were able to make the laws for themselves to favor themselves. This time around, sadly, they were beclouded by so many things, to the extent that they put certain sections and clauses that honestly, you know, worked against them, and it's too late. The attrition rate, I think, will be much, much higher
that we have seen in recent time.
Because many of them will not come. And we've been, you know, attacking, calling out the president. I think he has started rewriting history now. And he can do more, especially if he liberates the people from poverty and insecurity. But as far as fine-tuning the electoral laws are concerned, he has done very well. As far as playing fatherly role in happenings in his party, he has done very well. You can see nobody is now accusing Buhari of imposing candidate. Nobody is also accusing him of trying to manipulate who becomes the vice president. But it's not like he shut his doors. Any other person who knock, he will open. He will go and talk. You will leave, but you will not hear anything from him. Statesmanship, which is very good. For the legislators, I think it's an albatross for them, because many of them will not come back. Now, and then the Electoral Act has given enormous power to flag bearers. To the extent that if you attempt to replace somebody's name,
as we have seen with one or two candidates. Yeah.
Yes, because the winner can easily go to court and it's straightforward. He will get back his
mandate.
But smartly, you can see few people like Bauchi State Governor. You know, he found a way of
fine-tuning,
not having, because the electoral, and what it said now is, if maybe you put your stooge as an executive or whoever, a powerful politician, you put a stooge and you went on forum shopping somewhere and then you lose. When you come, to not just take the ticket, no. It says the person who came second
will take it.
Will take it. So in Bauchi and I think in Sokoto, they were smart enough. Maybe they read this thing very well. They were able
unopposed.
to. Yes. But there are many people who are now battling to see how they can get their ticket.
Like the Senate President.
I think Akpabio, yes, Senator Akpabio.
Yes, so it's really tough.
I think what was tabled before the Senate President was too big. He wasn't interested in what the spare arrangement was until it was too late also. Sokoto and Bauchi were interesting because they had single candidate, and so when those people said they were not interested, what had to happen was the process repeating itself. They are smart guys.
But you can see what happened in Akwa Ibom.
Yes.
Because the person who won the APC ticket wasn't a stooge. You know, he vied for it and he won. So now Akpabio went and now organized
a separate primaries.
INEC
said we don't recognize
that. It's serious.
It's unfortunate. People should understand when the ovation has stopped sounding so that they can take a back seat and cheer other people. Moving slightly away from politics, we saw yesterday the inflation figures from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. And the numbers seems to be going up now, fueled by fuel, bread, and the cost of gas, whether it is cooking gas or you're referring to aviation fuel or you are even referring to diesel. All of them are compounded in that nomenclature. What fears do you have with this continuous rise in inflation at a time when just about every indices seem to be against the common man?
Yesterday we went out and a civil servant knocked the window of our car and he was begging. Because he had exhausted the peanut. We're not talking about the minimum wage giving you a bag of rice because it's no longer tenable.
Exactly.
So honestly, it's an outright violation of the fundamental human rights of the citizens. This is my summary of the inflation, because people are just discussing the figures, not the implication of the figures. What we are seeing is that a civil servant or a public servant can no longer feed because Naira is zero now. So government must wake up and change the narrative by reclaiming the economy, because very few people are manipulating the economy, and we have to do the right thing by looking at the indices, because indices are there. If you cannot export, the foreign exchange will not come, and the foreign reserve will keep depleting, and then the cost of living will keep going up. Now, diesel, 700, 800?
It's about 800, 750 something.
So many industries have closed shop because they cannot just afford it. And the implication is that there will be rise in crimes and criminality, because some people who have no courage in court to beg. Because you even need to have that courage to beg. Some will start stealing now.
True.
So robbery will increase and all that. I'm looking at it from this
perspective.
So government should fix the system, and you can see we are not really, the prices of crude is increasing by the day.
To touch about $120.
So it's now, this is the time for Nigeria to even give free money. Because some countries are doing that.
True.
But you can see, simply because of the indiscretion of some people, it's now a cost to us.
No, that is quite unfortunate when you look at it from that perspective. But is there any end in sight? I mean, like,
yes. Nigeria is very rich. I'm telling you, the resources are there. We just have to do the right thing. One, let's quickly fix our refineries, build new ones, so that we now refine locally. If we refine locally, you can ask people, you can give people, say, okay, it is Christmas, so we are giving you free today. Go to the fields. It's ours.
But this is a dance that we've been doing for a very long time.
Yes.
Even this present administration rode on the wings of something like that. We'll revive for refineries, and then within the next one, the first year of our administration, we'll do this, we'll do that.
Yeah.
And we keep hearing it every time.
Because assuming we are refining our products, the dollars will be there.
Exactly.
The foreign reserve, because the resources are ours. Please imagine that we don't have crude oil. Will there be Nigeria?
Absolutely not.
So government is not doing favors for people. If you say nobody is subsidizing anything, Buhari has said this, and I still believe in this, because some people are not just doing the right thing. That is why we are talking about subsidy. Because if you have the refineries that are functioning, you block all the leakages. As we speak now, what is the volume of the crude
that we export?
It has come down. And then what do we have in return? Because the issue of under-recovery is what is actually taking the whole gains to import
refined
this fuel. And when it's not, I can't even remember the last time I bought fuel from Felicity, because I don't have the luxury of time to join the queue. So I buy 10 liters. Even yesterday, I bought 10 liters, 3,500 or 4,000. Then, if it's finished, I buy another one. It's really, really sad. Yes.
It's unfortunate. Away from the economic and political stories now to some of the things we now begin to see on a daily basis. We don't know whether they are just the propensity for these odds beginning to increase, or it is the media attention that seems to have increased in recent time. Every day you wake up, you hear of one bestiality or the other. Today we have on the cover of the papers how 4 men gang raped 13-year-old girl in Borno, and on the other hand, you find the act of killing somebody and leaving a paste or a sit-at-home paste on the cadaver. You know, every day you wake up, it's one odd story or the other. What's happening to our humanity?
We have lost it, and people believe in diabolical means to get to someone. Because I don't think if that gang rape episode was a pleasurable task. It wasn't. 4 of you raping a young girl.
13-year-old.
So most likely the charlatans were advised by one
native doctor
that, okay, if you rape a virgin, you will all be rich. This is my understanding, because, you know, privacy, you know, having affair is meant to be a pleasurable task. But by the time you now descended on someone against his or her will,
it becomes
you know that there was nothing like pleasure there. I mean, you are looking for something. We had a story yesterday that another episode of this kind of bestiality. The man descended on a young girl, and then he now wiped the semen with a handkerchief, and he fled. And the young girl narrated this. Now, people, in the court, they are asking him to produce
The handkerchief.
The handkerchief.
He refused. So you can now see how people have surrendered their destiny in the hands of, you know, useless people. Because the person who will now make you rich will ask you to give him maybe 5,000 or 10,000. Why can't he make himself rich? Now, for the other one, I don't want to say it, but people don't even want to call perpetrators of these crimes by their names. Now look at the debate in the parliament, and then the speech by the Minister of Information, and then the response
From the
to
governor.
by the governor. But why can't we just separate the crime from the profiling and then say, okay, let's just go after those against us, our common enemy? Because honestly, there is no difference between a terrorist, a thief,
A bandit.
IPOP, or whatever.
Whatever name.
They are all criminals. So the state should simply go after all of them, demystify them, so that people can have peace. But by the time we start thinking of saying, no, the crime was not perpetrated by IPOP, it was perpetrated by hoodlums. It was not terrorists, it was bandits. What are we talking about? Shifting blames. And that will not take us anywhere. So I pray that we stop, whenever there is a crime, we should just go for the criminal. Yes, take him out so that another one will not replace him. Yes.
Before we let you go, we said earlier it is the Ekiti State election coming up in another 72 hours. We are building momentum to 72, 48 hours, if I'm not mistaken, Ibrahim, even though we are not what do you call it, delegates to that election. And then the vice presidential candidate, we are looking forward to that critical announcement that would further sway some people or shift alliance, as the case may be. We would like your final thoughts on these two major political activities leading us into this weekend. Your words for how people in the Ekiti State election should comport and conduct themselves. The stakes are high. We saw the clerics and the traditional moving into really calm phrase. We know how soldiers have been shooting in that state in the last 1 week, trying to douse tension, and that alone has the capacity to further discourage some popular participation.
My prayer is that security agencies should work hard so that people will not be scared. That is with respect to the Ekiti election, so that people will come out. Let's change the tone. Let's see whether the issue of voter turnout will now be positive instead of 110 or 120,000 people
deciding who becomes a governor.
Millions of people. Yes, let's see the votes count so that we get a credible leader. Because if you allow just 200 people to elect your governor, you are in for it. Because you cannot hold him to account.
True.
Exactly.
He will call you out if you attempt to mess him up. Good. Now, at the national level, I'm very happy that some of our laws are really working. You can now see that any of the political parties, about 18 or 17 that have fielded presidential candidates, they have maybe not 24 hours. I think it's around 30 hours because it will be maybe
midnight,
towards evening that they have, meaning no option. Yesterday, our editor-in-chief, he forwarded something that, because nothing is impossible now. There is this claim that Tinubu has picked somebody, Masari.
Yes.
I don't know whether it's the governor or because Masari is the name of, I think, town, something good, so as to beat the INEC deadline. We're not sure. But it's, politicians are extremely slippery.
That's right.
But they have no option but to produce. But they know that they have to make the right decision, irrespective of the, minute and needless, issues surrounding that. But it's their last moment to get it right, because election will be here sooner than later.
Absolutely. Well, we are deeply running out of time. You have heard it all from Malam Hamza Idris. Quite a number of political education, if you like, on this episode. If you recall, the last time he was here, some 7 days ago, he talked about our elections evolving to the level where we can even begin to name ministers before the swearing in. And that way, maybe those of us on this side of the media, we begin to even bring you profiles of these persons and what they had done playing similar roles and how much they fit into whatever roles. We look forward to them and what the agendas will be, so that the moment you are sworn in at the Eagle Square, you hit the ground running. There is no waiting for 6 months to contemplate who is a saint, who is a devil, who is a fit, and who is a misfit. Quite a number of work waiting for us, quite a number of evolutions that we have gone through in the last 7 years, and still quite a number of evolutions waiting to happen between now and the election period. We will be here to bring you all the minutest of details, to bring you all of the analysis that you would need as far as the 2023 elections are concerned. It is the point where we would say goodbye to Malam Hamza Idris, who, like he told you, has so much contending for his time on an average day. We wish you all the best, and we hope that we see you again in a fortnight or even earlier than that. We will take a short breather at this point, and the show continues when we return. Please stay with us.
Daily, we bring you updates around politics.
People like you who are very young, you have no future. Anybody now who is 30 years, if what is happening today continues, by the time you are 60, you will have no country.
The DPO of a particular unit does not have to wait until the commissioner tells him what to do within his jurisdiction.
We have political parties on the ground. Some of them have been there for years. But they themselves, in their own sober moments, they know that this country is not the one they're expecting to run.
Policy and governance.
Are you saying the NBS is lying?
I'm saying to you very clearly that the NBS has a serious problem with accurate data till today.
The 5th Assembly, as well as the 7th Assembly, their own attempt were unproductive.
Emergence of the Taliban has simply emboldened terror groups globally.
There is a lot of attention with regards to security developments in Nigeria.
On Daily Politics, we interrogate issues, holding the actors to account, bearing in mind all the sides.
We heard that in some places now, people have to go and pay tax, not to the local government, not to the state, but to criminals.
Nobody can come to your house and kidnap you without information.
If this country is bleeding, it is bleeding because we have failed to educate our young.
It's 8 a.m. in the morning. Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television. I am Sunday Michael Ogu.
It is a beautiful morning out here, and of course, it's Daybreak on Trust TV. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
If you're just joining us, the train has since left the station. We've made some very interesting stuff with headline reviews and some analysis from our in-house analysts touching on quite a number of issues as it borders on the headlines of the major newspaper this morning. At this point, we will bring you the news highlights. Southeast kick as PDP National Working Committee approves Wike as Atiku's running mate.
ASU strike more complex than Nigerians think, says federal government.
Nigeria foreign reserve dips by $2.9 billion in 8 months, according to the International Monetary Fund.
And now let's take a look at the details. Following the recommendations of the National Advisory Committee, the National Working Committee of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has approved the nomination of Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike as the vice presidential candidate of the party for the 2023 elections. Daily Trust reliably gathered from various sources that the NWC members, after studying the report of the committee, unanimously endorsed Wike. The committee, said to have been put together by the presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar, had earlier recommended Wike for the VP ticket. The three governors initially recommended by the National Advisory Committee were Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike, Delta State Governor Ifeanyi Okowa, and Udom Emmanuel of Akwa Ibom State.
And moving on, the Federal Executive Council has said issues around the ongoing industrial action embarked by the Academic Staff Union of the universities, ASU, and other three university-based unions are not as simple as Nigerian thinks. The Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, said this on Wednesday while briefing status reporters on the outcome of the virtual Federal Executive Council meeting presided by the President, Muhammadu Buhari, at the Presidential Villa in Abuja. He also announced that the Council approved the establishment of e-learning centers for primary schools across the 36 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. ASU said the ASU strike started on February 14th over unresolved issues with the federal government of Nigeria.
And now for a look at the economy, where the Nigerian Foreign Exchange Reserve has dropped by $2.9 billion within 8 months, according to the International Monetary Fund, IMF. IMF also said that the current account deficit narrowed significantly in 2021, helped by import compression and higher net oil balance. On the real gross domestic product, IMF stated that the growth is broadening to all sectors except oil, but inflation remains high. Global Lender added that the economic recovery continues to gain strength on the back of services and agriculture, with GDP growth reaching 3.6% in the first quarter of 2022. An International Monetary Fund team led by Yasmin Rahman held meetings with the Nigerian authorities from June 6 to 10, 2022 to discuss recent economic and financial developments and the economic outlook for the country.
That's it on the news highlight this morning. And moving on to report packages, the federal government says the country's agricultural research sector loses at least $100 million yearly to its inability to attract grants from local and foreign grant-issuing foundations and organizations. As part of the measures to correct this, the federal government is organizing a training workshop in Ilorin, the Kwara State capital, for research officers on how to access the fund from donor agency. We'll bring you the report.
Speaking at the opening of a week-long training workshop on grantsmanship for agricultural research officers by the Agriculture and Rural Management Training Institute, Ilorin, Kwara State, the executive director of the institute, Dr. Olufemi Oladuni, laments the effects of non-access to the funds to the Nigeria agricultural sector.
We are not accessing at all. It's not that they are not ready to give us. It is because we are not assessing them. Nigerians have been missing a lot in terms of getting research funds, research grants from so many agencies, at least, even from Europe, who are assisting them.
The AMT boss said that the institute deemed it necessary to contribute its own quota into developing the skills, knowledge and research competence of the nation's scientists and make them develop better quality and high-yielding varieties to improve food security in Nigeria.
We are not attracting, and you know what that can do in the research system. Only in agriculture, you know what it can do. So when you extend it and look at the value chain for research itself, you know there are a lot of, not only for research scientists alone, we have other actors along the research value chain that are losing these opportunities.
The Kwara State government, on its part, agrees and promised to continue to provide enabling environment for agriculture to thrive in the state.
The state government, too, in its own capacity, have been doing a whole lot, to empower people in terms of capacity building, because it's beyond just, even giving out resources. If you don't build the capacity of the people, there is no way they can utilize these resources. So, in our own efforts, we have been doing a lot of capacity building for, ensuring our people are able to utilize all these opportunities.
50 participants across research institutes and higher institutions are taking part in the one-week training.
I just want to say that this set of participants is a plethora of highly cerebral academicians and researchers that cut across agricultural research institutes, colleges of agriculture, and even the universities.
They expressed readiness to make the best use of the knowledge to enhance the agricultural sector.
Now, the federal government says in its initial submission that the Owo Church attack had the imprint of ISWAP was based on intelligence reports. It is, however, refusing to get into a debate on the correctness of that piece of information. Minister of Information Lai Mohammed made the federal government side clear on Wednesday while briefing newsmen at State House Abuja after a meeting of the Federal Executive Council. Kehinde Amadu reports.
Ever since the information minister's projection that the Owo Catholic Church attack was probably carried out by the Islamic State West Africa province ISWAP, the stand has come under criticism. The governor of Ondo State, Rotimi Akeredolu, described the conclusion as being too hasty. And when asked his opinion on Wednesday, the information minister refused to get involved in a debate.
And whether it's not, I don't think that is the issue really. The issue is that it ought not have happened, and the security is doing its best to ensure there will be no repeat of it. The federal government has access to a lot of information and intelligence reports. And I want to say that saying it was ISWAP must have been based on their intelligence reports.
The information minister was also not forthcoming when asked about the federal government losing its $1.7 billion claim against JP Morgan Chase Bank over the transfer of proceeds from the sale of OPL 245 in the controversial Malabu oil deal. Judge.
Strangely enough, the judge said we were not able to establish that we lost $1.7 billion. But I also read further that the lawyers say they have studied the judgment and they would take the appropriate step, whether to appeal or not.
And speaking on another projection he made on education, the information minister acknowledged that the underlying issues in the ongoing strike by the Academic Staff Union of Universities were complicated.
I wish that the ASU issue is as simple as many of us think it is. I don't think it's that simple, but I want to assure you that a lot is going on behind the scenes, and I think probably the Minister of Education will be in a better position to give you the details.
The Federal Executive Council, however, went ahead in its usual tradition on Wednesday to approve contracts in the Ministries of Works and Housing and Aviation. From State House, Abuja, Kehinde Amudu, Trust TV News.
And moving on to politics, members of the House of Representatives have called for a veto to overrule President Muhammadu Buhari on Section 84, subsection 8, which has refused to assent to by invoking Section 58. The federal government made the call at plenary. The federal lawmakers, I beg your pardon, made the call at plenary on Wednesday after many lawmakers lost their seats due to the president's not assenting to the electoral amendment by both chambers of the National Assembly. The report.
In an environment, in an institution, where the two leaders of the Senate would have to cross to other parties because of an inherent inclement condition. Anything that occasions it, anything that warrants it, if it is our electoral act, if it is our politics, if it is the environment where we operate, we need to retool. And like you said, we got to do a better work and we have to fight on. For me, it is just a battle that is lost. The war is on, and that we should go ahead to make sure that that law is retooled, made clear, and if it demands of, it requires this parliament to take action to override.
And that's a wrap on the headlines and, of course, the package reports. We'll take a short break right now, and when we return, Daybreak continues. To stay with us. Welcome back to Daybreak on Trust TV. Well, barring any last-minute extensions by INEC, presidential candidates or political parties are expected to name their running mates by 6 p.m. on Friday, June 17th, 2022. Now, on Daybreak today, we are going to look at the likely individuals that are being considered by major political parties. But first, let's listen to the chairman of Northern Governors Forum, Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State, and Senator Orji Uzor Kalu.
I am not even, if I'm aspiring to be the vice president, I've told you, I am not aspiring because it is my fate. I'm aspiring because I am qualified. First, that's it. Because when you are measuring that kind of thing, first you aspire, look at people who are qualified to go in. When we pick them, we pick 5 to, we didn't talk about religion, yes, because we said they should move in. But then in politics, there's always a tradition. And when people start to believe in that kind of tradition, the moment you deny them that tradition, it means that you are already excluding them from politics. I take that from where I came from, Plateau. I realized that some of this crisis, everything that was happening was because of exclusion. People believed that they were excluded. No matter in politics, you talk about the majority having their say, having their way, while the minority must give them opportunity to have a say. Once you have that, you have completely peace in your place. What are we talking about today? We are talking about peaceful federation. We are talking about a progressive federation in crisis. Already we are in crisis. How to manage the crisis. It's not only winning the election, you are also going to win the election and thinking of governing the nation.
Well, listen, do you want me to speak the truth? Yes. If I am enamored of Bola Tinubu's situation, the wife is a senior pastor in a Pentecostal church, I will go Muslim ticket. The most important thing is for the party to win. It's not, we should stop all this rubbish about whether you put a Christian there. After all, if we win, already the wife is a pastor that have been living for over 50-something years together. I've known them this far. So why do you want to blame about, she's already like a deputy president. If I'm to say, I'm saying I'm a Catholic. I'm saying my opinion. This is Orji Kalu's opinion. You cannot deny me my opinion. But you can also play Christian ticket, depending on the scenario. Because if we don't play Muslim, we're in trouble. We will not win it will be most difficult to win the election. Because the only thing left to Ahmed Tinubu today is to play Muslim. I know that the church I go to, the Catholic secretary might condemn it, so it's not good to. What is wrong with Muslim ticket? I don't see anything. In my eye, there's nothing wrong in Christian ticket. Also, it depends on the condition. The condition we found ourselves today, that you cannot play two minorities. Tinubu is a minority Muslim from the south, and if you put a Christian from the north, is a minority Christian from the north. You cannot play two minorities. So it is difficult. No, listen. What I am telling you is sincerely from my mind. It's not the position of our party. Yes. This Ojekalo's position. I sit with Ahmed Tinubu's wife in the Senate, and the wife is a pastor. So there's nothing wrong with that. They've been married, and moreover, I've known Tinubu for a very long time. He's not a man who preaches Christian and Muslim. He's a man who goes with everybody who can do the work. So for me, the issue of is a Christian, I know that most Christians will be hurt what I'm saying, but putting a Christian will not make him to be a best president, or picking a Muslim will not make him. It's his conscience. Conscience is a wound. Only the truth can heal it.
So you don't think that a Muslim ticket means that Tinubu is putting his faith too much in the hands of the North against his own South?
Are Northerners, are they not Nigerians? Are they not Nigerians? No, I ask you, answer me. Are they not Nigerians?
Yeah, Nigerians, the Southerners are Nigerians as well.
Well, some interesting takes. All right, there. Well, we right now in the studio, we have a member of the APC, Honorable Shehu Atta, to help us dissect this issue from an APC perspective. You're welcome to Daybreak.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we've just heard Orji Uzor-Kalu, and with his own opinion concerning the potential running mate for your flag bearer. That's for the APC. What do you align with what he says?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I align with what he said because, no two political period is the same. The scenario that played out in 2019 is quite different from the scenario we're having now. In 2019, we had President Muhammadu Buhari running for his second term coming from the North. And it was easy for us to ride on his progress and his popularity from the North. And the North as well having the voting strength for the country, the political strength for the country. So right about now, the scenario is the same, it's different, because we have a presidential candidate coming from the minority southern part of the country, the southwest, in the person of Bola Tinubu, like Senator Orji Uzor-Kalu just mentioned. We have to analyze what we have on our hands, and our focus is to win the election. So if we're going to win the election on a Muslim ticket, we have to win election first before we can constitute government. And the paramount thing in APC's mind now is continuity, because the president has done a lot of things that need to be continued. I get in it. And when you look at PDP's primary election, they have sacrificed everything on the altar of winning the election. On the altar of political expediency, they have sacrificed everything. So we have a northern president that have run 8 years, and they still give their ticket to a northern candidate on the altar of winning election. So what is paramount for us now is we have been able to conduct a primary election successfully. We have gotten a best candidate who can bring forward on a free and fair primary election in the person of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and our focus is winning election.
Talking about winning election, we have heard all kinds of arguments, just as you have aligned with what you think is best. But what is the price for this decision? You would have listened to the position of Lalong, and he made some very germane, raised some very germane concerns.
Inclusion.
Much as the majority would have their say, it's important that it is seen that the concern of the minority is also taken on board. Is it just about winning elections or about keeping a country? Well, it's easy to say the PDP gave up everything. Maybe the people were hoping the second, the two biggest political, the other one would have taken their sensibility into account. Is it about jettisoning people's feeling on the altar of doing everything to get to the office?
Okay, what is the problem we're having in Nigeria? I would say it's not even about religion. I get in it. The problem we're having in Nigeria is about failure of governance that has accumulated over a very long period of time. You know, irrespective of, I have friends that are Christian. Most of my best friends are Christians. You get? So it's not about religion, ethnicity, or it's about performance. We have a PDP government that since the advent of democracy that have done 16 years, they've not been able to lay a good foundation for the country. So the people have been so pushed to the wall that, okay, what will result to now is religion, faith. To have a sense of security, we put our hope in God. To have a sense of performance, politician performing in the various offices, we put our faith in God. So what we're talking about is performance, not about religion. So we need somebody that will come and reset our security.
That speaks to my question, essentially, which is the point I would like us to address. Is it that it is impossible to find people who would give us performance, who can, because it does appear to me that even the consideration of the Muslim ticket is to appeal to the sentiments of some persons where they think the vote will come from. If that is good enough to take into account by those who want to win the election at all costs, it also means that the argument of the other people is germane, because we have seen politicians who get to the office and every government allocation goes to their village. We have somebody in the Senate today who has somehow managed to push 2 universities to his own local government, whereas he represents 6. You know, on those kind of accounts, people then begin to come to the realization that the only way we can get something on our side is when somebody from our side is in power. So how do we, it's a genuine agitation. Absolutely. And the people who have perpetrated these acts are from both parties. The PDP had 16 years. You said they mess up. Let's take it without conceding. You have also had 7 years. We have seen a continuation of those attitudes. Are we addressing this the right way? Rather than say it's just about winning the election, are we putting forward the competency of the candidate rather than the place where they come from?
Now, you know, we are so fortunate in this political period. When I say we are so fortunate is that I'm talking about the APC. I'm not talking about the PDP.
I get it.
Because we have a candidate that is Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that is detribalized. That is, his decision is not informed by your faith, or whether you're preaching Islam or you're preaching Christianity. He's detribalized, not talking about ethnicity, he's not talking about religion. As a matter of fact, to cap it up, he has married a wife of over 30 years that is a senior pastor in the Pentecostal church. You know, so when I'm talking about, and this is the closest person to our presidential candidate on the surface of the earth today that he sleeps and wakes up with is a pastor. So if he's somebody that they've been married for over 40 years, and if somebody that is thinking about religion as predicating his sense of judgment, he wouldn't have married a pastor. So now let's put that aside. We're talking about competency. Somebody that will come and reset and build on the positives that this government have recorded for the past 7 years. The PDP has opportunity of resetting this country in 16 years. A child of 16 years is almost an adult. Is an adult.
I agree.
The PDP has an opportunity of resetting this country, of putting everything in place, of preaching a country where your religion, your faith will not trump before your performance. But so we're lucky to have a candidate in Asiwaju that is coming from a private sector with a robust experience in the public sector, and we have seen his track record. He's a very brilliant man. He's you listen to him spoke on the day he picked up his presidential, the APC presidential flag bearer. You know, listen to, so did he speak like somebody who is a religious chauvinist? He did not. So we are lucky to have an Asiwaju that will choose a vice president that will deliver the vote to us. If we don't form government, how do you talk about delivering on, on governance? So we must be in government first. This is not the party's position. It's my personal opinion. So anything can still happen.
All right. Well, still talking about competence and the right person for the job, the right man for the job.
Yes.
Lots of names have been thrown into the mix. Exactly. Kashim Shettima on one end, Yakubu Dogara, Simon Lalong. All of these names have actually been thrown into the mix. If we look at them now, and even Boss Mustafa, his name is also has been thrown into it. Are all these people that we're talking about, are they all qualified in your eye to actually deliver what you just talked about right now? A person that can actually unite the country, be a positive influence, and of course still deliver the votes that you need to win the election.
Like what I'm going to answer you now is my personal opinion. I'm not saying the party's position. Right. It's my personal position. Evaluating our prospective vice presidential candidate with the caliber of people we have on board. Talking about the Yakubu Dogara, Boss Mustafa, Kashim Shettima. You know, in APC, we have an array of progressives, minded, smart, young men and women that can deputize or be the next vice president. They're all qualified. As a matter of fact, from the northeast flank of the country, we have an array of them. All of them are qualified. In fact, the name I've not even seen that I was expecting to see there too is Malam Nuhu Ribadu. Yes, Malam Nuhu Ribadu is also from northeast. He's qualified. He is the founding father of the EFCC. This is a man that built an institution within just 3 years. And that institution is ranking in the country today as one of the best institutions, that is the EFCC. He's also qualified. I should be seen about 4 names there. So irrespective of religion, the APC has array of individuals from the northeast that are highly qualified to deliver on, and you have to start looking at individual strength. Why I'm passionate about Malam Nuhu Ribadu's antecedents or experiences is, this is somebody coming from security, and policy background. Somebody that have successfully built an institution. Before you can deliver to governance, you have to have a formidable institution that can anchor on that. This is a man that built an institution in 3 years. And up to this period, that institution is one of the best in the country.
You know, I have to cut him. It's because I don't want
we should include him on the list.
Because we may have to raise you a receipt for campaigning for Malam Nuhu Ribadu. As you were talking about him, one interesting juxtaposing perspective in my head was, on the one hand, you said PDP lost the opportunity to do anything. And today we are canvassing for a candidate that was discovered and made by the PDP and talking about an institution that he built under the PDP. It's ironic how this country works. But we also hear of a certain gentleman agreement he had with the governors about producing his running mate. Could this have been the reason why this whole process has been delayed? I want to think that for a man who has had a lifelong ambition to be the president, he ought to have at the back of his mind the person who he think would be a fitting running mate. Why is it taking forever? Why do we have to keep everybody as tensed as we saw during the convention to be able to just say, this is the man? And I'm saying this because in previous conventions, whether it's of the APC or the major opposition party, within 24, 48 hours, we knew who these running mates were, whether they were usual people or they came from somewhere, but at least we knew who they were and the journey began. Why is this process just nearly impossible, and why do we have to deliver these just moments before the deadline?
As you can see, like referring to PDP, they did their convention almost 2 weeks before we did ours. And up to now, they are still in the
in
crisis
that
of
quagmire.
choosing the vice presidential candidate. It's because of the time we find ourselves. You know, they rocked the water for us. Ideally, what the PDP ought to have done was to come on board with a politics of inclusiveness. You get to come on board with that, but they tend to trump a winning election before thinking about inclusiveness.
Which is a path you are also following now.
No, that's not the path we are following, because we have actually laid a good foundation for we have been able to keep our words that our next presidential candidate is going to come from the south.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we have done. It's unthinkable that we have a president coming from the north and he has done 8 years, and you're still going to give your own.
You see, that boils down to the same arguments for me. If
So it's an unusual time.
yeah.
It's an unusual time that we need, and we thank God our candidate is a very smart man, somebody that is a visionary. So, and I would know that whoever is going to emerge as our VP candidate is going to think about the capacity, the ability of the person to complement his own skills. And he's going to look at the country, because it's the country first.
That's right.
He's going to look at the country, and as a progressive and as somebody who is very, very, very brilliant. And we are hopeful that beyond 2023 we are going to have a country that is more stable, and I'm sure he's going to put all this into consideration. And it's not a decision you rush to make. You have to do a lot of consultation, trade-off here and there, consult with our party leader, with our President Muhammadu Buhari, and I'm sure at the end of the day, when this is announced, I will all be impressed.
All right. So I'll have to get your view on this. I want to know what your view is on a female vice presidential candidate, because that's something that has
I think we
surfaced.
saw some names too flying around. Some of our finest breeds who are on international duty. International duty at the moment came up for mentioning.
Exactly.
I'm not sure whether it's for the APC. I think we saw Amina Mohammed come up for mentioning. We also saw Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. I mean, in their rights, they will be an ideal vice president any day. What's happening to that part of inclusion?
Just suppose, Nigeria is a very great country, and we have a lot of talents, we have a lot of capacity, north, south, west, east, we have a lot of talent irrespective of gender, and we have been able to produce a lot of female leaders that have worldwide recognition. Okonjo-Iweala, Amina, Muhammad in the UN and all that. But in doing this, in choosing our vice presidential candidate, you have to consider the terrain. This is politics, and politics is a game of number.
I hope those women are not listening to you, because the numbers actually belong to them.
It's a game of numbers. This is politics.
But the majority of people that you see in the polling units when it's time to vote are women.
Yes.
Women
Why would
are
they
the
not?
ones that come out to vote.
But you cannot extricate culture, culture from politics.
What about competence? Does that go out the window?
No, your ability to be able to manage all this and deliver is what makes you somebody like an Asiwaju.
Interesting.
You get your ability to maneuver, your ability to maneuver between the context of culture, religion, ethnicity in the country we find ourselves, and still being able to deliver. That is what an Asiwaju has been able to achieve in Lagos.
But if we're talking about inclusivity, it's not just about religion or which part of the country you come from.
Yes.
Gender is also a part of it.
Absolutely.
So if we're trying to be inclusive, why aren't the women in it with a shout?
No, the woman must not occupy the vice presidential position.
Shiwaju has a history of having a woman as a deputy.
Absolutely.
Why not at the national level?
In the southwest region of the country, coincidentally, is a region where religion is much downplayed, or your gender is much downplayed, probably because of their level of enlightenment. In a household, you will see the head of the family can be a Muslim, and the wife will be a Christian. You get, or the head of the family can be a Christian, and the wife. So they don't really put that as a factor. You know, and when you look at Asiwaju's antecedents, Tinubu's antecedent in Lagos, you know, this is a man that had somebody from Southeast as a commissioner, somebody from the Southwest, Lagos, you know, other states within the Southwest region as commissioners in his cabinet, Christian, Muslim, you know, mixed, and they were still able to deliver and leave a legacy that we're talking about.
Okay, I would give you the opportunity to answer 2 quick questions in 30 seconds. The first one is, I know you have talked about Nuhu Ribadu. Who do you think would emerge in this round? That's the first one. The second question, which is a prelude to that, is how long until we see this person? Do we have to wait to the wee hours of tomorrow, or is there going to be an announcement today, given that you have some knowledge of the inner workings of the APC?
Okay. Well, the response I'm going to give here is my personal, from what I have seen, you know, so far. Who is likely to be, from my opinion?
Okay, let me make it easy for you. Can you rank in order of priorities?
Oh, in order of priorities. If I'm going to rank in order of priority, my own priority is going to be, the question I'll ask myself now is, what is the major problem of the North now? Because in identifying what the major problem of the North is now, then you should be able to think about that and marry that to our current presidential candidate. You get, our major problem in the North now is security. And that is why I was thinking about somebody from the Northeast in the caliber of Malam Nuhu Ribadu.
Okay.
I'll rank him first.
I was thinking you would say Shettima as a governor who confronted security.
I will rank Malam Nuhu Ribadu first.
Okay.
Then I'll rank Shettima second.
Okay.
I get in, and others follow.
Okay, interesting. And so when do you think this whole
The deadline is tomorrow.
Yes, that's by
going
INEC.
by INEC deadline. By the end of the day, we should be able to come up with something, or by early hours of tomorrow morning.
Interesting. Interesting. It's been an interesting time talking with our guest, Honorable Shehu, who has given us deep insight into the workings of the APC, the thinking of some members of the APC, including himself, on some of the dynamics and the permutations that seem to have gone underground, some of the undercurrents that are not playing out exactly in the television screen, on deciding who that running mate will be. Interesting time in the annals of our political history. We would understand eventually the considerations for this. I mean, as we have heard from a lot of party forerunners, that quite a number of things are in contention. And as he said, there has to be, you have to win an election to constitute a government, to talk about competency and all of that. It's a pleasure having you in the studio once again, talk about this. We hope that when the candidates emerge and when we beckon on you again, you will come around and maybe help us understand what would have gone down with regards to the choice of that candidate and what exactly he brings to the ticket. Thank you for finding time to be with us, and have a fruitful day ahead.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure coming here.
It's a pleasure. We will take another breather, and when we return, the discussions continue.
As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be? Do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children. Protect them from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NOAA.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television. And now talking economics. Yesterday, the Bureau of Statistics released the latest inflation figures, and the Consumer Price Index, which measures the rate of changes in price of goods and services, surged to 17.71% in May 2022, up from 16.82% in the previous month. The Bureau of Statistics said this in its report for 2022 released on Wednesday. The figure is 0.22 points lower than the 17.93% recorded in May 2021. With the development, it means that the headline inflation rate slowed down in May 2022 compared to the same month in the previous year. Financial analyst Mukhtar Mohammed joins us now via Skype from Lagos to help us make sense of some of these data that were released by the Bureau of Statistics. Good morning, Mukhtar, and it's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Good morning. Always a pleasure to be on Trust TV.
Thank you. Can you please help us, our viewers, break down the implications of yesterday's report? We know that on a month-on-month basis, it was an increase, even though on year-on-year, we saw a bit of slowing down with gas, fuel, and bread being the major pushers of that figure. What does this signpost for the average household?
Pointing your bets. It's not good times. Especially when your earnings is not meeting up with inflation. At times like this, it's only investment that meets up with inflation, not earnings, not what your income. So unfortunately, most Nigerians do have enough to invest, and we're talking about even meeting your daily needs. Like you said, it's not the year in the last year compared with this year. There's a lot of difference. There's a lot of average Nigerian as we stand now. So what it means is that the cost of a lot of product has gone up, the cost of good has gone up, the cost of services also have gone up. It's an all-round up trend. Russia-Ukraine war anytime soon, and SARS, which happen to be the effect on every household. Today is not just the first time in 40 years America, and also with the United Kingdom. When you look at an EU country like 2.2%, so progressive global problem, and that is that we may get into recession. But on our own side, unfortunately, what we're supposed to be gaining, we are losing it because we are import products. So it's a big challenge. The challenge is that when you see begin to increase in the rural area, we have a must and curtail as soon as possible.
Usually when this discussion comes up, the first thing everybody says is it's not a Nigerian thing, it's a global issue, there's a war going on somewhere and it's affecting everybody and all that. But this is what we know. We know Nigeria. Whatever goes on elsewhere, that is what they know. But we know Nigeria. So isn't there anything we can do in terms of maybe a short-term policy or some short-term measures that we can actually take as a country that will be able to minimize these effects that we're actually facing right now because of this economic downturn?
Yes, there's a lot, but I need to correct it. You know, the world is a global village now. What happened in one happened in the other. And then the strategy you use to address it has to be different. I totally agree with you. What are we going to do? Because when we mentioned the United Kingdom, I mentioned the United States, they are doing things in terms of reducing the burden on their people, especially in the area of tax. A petroleum tax is no more in the US. Most of US states have removed petroleum tax at the moment, so that will help in bringing down the cost of gas. And in the UK also, they are looking at other areas, especially most of these are always in the gas area. And so they are looking at other areas of seeing how they can even get into the reserve and pump this into their economy. Now, with Nigeria, we have a structural problem in the fact that we don't even know which household is the poor, is the middle class, or the extreme rich. That is a problem. And again, we also need to look at government is thinking of revenue because government have borrowed so much that even the revenue is not even enough. We hear the minister also saying that yesterday that they might even be borrowing to pay salary. I mean, the accountant general said they are even borrowing to pay salary. And the minister said they are beginning to have a payment challenge. I remember before we were saying it was a revenue challenge, but now we want both revenue and payment challenge. So when you look at this, is government ready to take a bite on some of these all their taxes, all their levy? But if you look currently at the predicament of government is not ready to take a bite because government is looking at, look, we need to pay our debt, we need to build infrastructure. Rather, what we're seeing that government is trying to look onto other areas to even tax Nigeria and the more. Remember, of recent, we came up with the national health scheme that says that people will have to pay a particular amount for every call you make with GSM. So it's all boiled down to government taking a bite on their revenue and saying, look, for now, we are going to do this, we are going to reduce revenue, we are going to reduce our taxes in this area so that it will have a snowball effect. We are going to see how we can reduce levies on transportation. We are going to see how much we can do to reduce the challenge that we have in the area of diesel, which is the one area that is skyrocketing, and where we need to understand that we might get to as high as 1,500 within the next 2 weeks. So government need to look at that because that's an area that affects a lot of industry with the poor power situation we have in the land. So I think it's boiled down to government beginning to look at how they can take a bite on their revenue.
Mukhtar, I listen to you and I hear government need to do this and government need to do this and government need to do the other thing. And I'm afraid, going by what is happening in our political landscape in the last 4 to 6 weeks, or if you like, over 2 months since that presidential comment, everywhere had been let loose. All our political actors are interested in what happens in 2023. We seem to have taken our eyes off the pedal as far as galvanizing economic activities to respond to both local and international headwinds. How much of a trouble are we in? Doesn't it appear to you that we have completely lost track as far as doing the things we need to do to put back this economy on track?
I totally agree with you, and that has been the challenge, and that's what I'm talking about, structural problem, because we make the minister the almighty. The minister will be the one to make decisions, and the PAMSEC do not have this position to begin to make the decision. For me, that's a major, major challenge. Rather, government is not supposed to take the backseat. We have the PAMSEC, we have also the directors, but when the politicians are at the head and every box stops on their table, that is why we have the challenge here. So it's still structural problems. And so we need to address that structural problem. And how do we address that structural problem? Is beginning to make sure that PAMSEC also have a role to play in every department and parastatal, because government is the biggest spend. It's the biggest spender in any economy. And so once government is not spending, then the economy is going to suffer. So I totally agree with you. But how do we go about this? Unfortunately, as it stands now, just like you say, governors are taking the backseat, and that's why I say that the CBN is beginning to do everything. The CBN has become the monetary policy. The CBN is doing the fiscal policy. The CBN is trying to address what the executive should be doing. So it's a big challenge, and and this is something that I think the legislation, or we need to do something about it, whereby once we get into the political year, governance take a backseat. Even if the current president is even going to end his tenure, there seems to be a lot of political around him, not
Okay. We seem to be having... Okay, can you hear me, Mukhtar?
I can hear you clearly.
Your thoughts before I take the next question, yeah?
Yeah, like I said, it's all about governance, doing what they have to do and making sure that the PAMSECs and the DGs are doing all they have to do to make sure that the economy is moving.
Just a quick one, and that is tying back to the question that Ibrahim asked a little earlier. So we cannot continue like this, obviously. I would like you to give us what you think are the low-hanging fruits to at least check some of these exacerbations. Today you wake up, cooking gas is 4,000. Tomorrow you wake up, it's 10,000. The day after it is hitting the 12,000 mark. And then you look back, they tell you we are spending 4 trillion naira on subsidy. We have done over 2 trillion or about 2 trillion already. And we are still finding it difficult to find the fuels on the streets of Abuja. And the NNPC has not contributed a dime, a single forest to Federal Account Allocation Committee since January.
It's a big challenge, like you said. Let me give you this. The challenge we have is the FX challenge that we have, because most of these products that are household product, daily product for Nigerians are products that are imported into this country, and we are having the FX challenge. So it's a problem of that we have. We don't have enough to import, because again, like you said, all what we should be making in revenue is being turned back into payment of subsidy, which cannot be substantiated. And then look at it, one of these products that are suffering from this high price, like you talked about, cooking gas, these are not sectors that are being subsidized by governments. Government is not subsidizing any of those sectors. So most of them have to source for FX themselves and sourcing at the parallel market for as high as 600 to 610 naira. So you could see those effects being pointed down to the consumer. Remember, Nigeria is a consuming nation. And when it comes to the subsidy is a monster that no administration has summoned the courage to fight it and make sure we come to an end. It's doing us no good. I keep saying this subsidy only enrich the rich, make the rich richer by the day, and make the poor poorer by the day. So we need to do something. And again, like I said, government, if you want to address this issue, like you said, now government need to take a bite on the revenue. Remember that even in the gas issue that we're talking, diesel and cocoa gas, we may need to understand that by the time this program comes into this country, we're having it at about maybe 150. I mean, petroleum product about 159 naira. But by the time you have to take government revenue, government charges, this and that, then it goes as high as 193 naira. How can government take a bite so that this price can come down and then Nigerians will be able to benefit from the same thing with the cooking gas? So we need to do something about it. And I tell you, for the first time I say it authoritative, the buck stop on the table of the government. They need to take a bite on their revenue. We need to begin to know how to address our FX problem. Unfortunately, it's not a problem that can be addressed in the short term. So we need to look at long-term solution to our FX problem. But what we need to address, and we need to address it as soon as possible, do we continue this subsidy monster?
All right, well, definitely something needs to be done. Mukhtar Mohammed, thank you very much for those insights and giving us some very deep thinking thoughts right there when it comes to Nigeria's economy and the way we're heading. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be on Trust TV.
All right. Well, that is how we are going to wrap it up today on Daybreak on Trust TV. Join us again tomorrow as we swing your way right here. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
Do have a lovely day ahead. I am Sunday Michael Oven.